Awesome. All right. So we will probably have quite a few more stragglers coming in, but regardless, let's kick it off and get started. Welcome to the Learn to Code React single page app. This is geared for beginners who have never coded or are within their first 6 months of learning how to code. If you are advanced coder or have more than 6 months, hopefully this will all be review and you won't get any new information here, but you'll be able to brush up on what you already know. If you are new to coding, you will touch a lot of new technologies, all of which we will review today in very, very small amounts. So I wanted to go over the curriculum and what we'll be learning over the next 12 weeks. So over the next 12 weeks, we've got today's course, today's class, which will be Figma and getting used to designing the web page and knowing what we're going to build. Then the next week, we'll get into color schemes and taking a picture and figuring out how to tailor a showcase or a website based on a picture. And then we'll get into HTML and CSS coding a little bit more in depth. And then we'll get into responsive design. After that, we'll start our JavaScript and actual coding. And we'll start with some variables, some for loops, if statements, functions, and classes. And we'll get into some very, very, very basic object-oriented programming. After that, we'll jump into React, our first actual framework to build our single page app. And then in week 7, we'll create some components. Week 8, we'll continue to create the components in the showcase section, and we'll make it all responsive. And then we'll create a couple other sections. And then finally, we'll have a form that we create. And then towards the end in week 11, we'll talk about routing. And routing will come in handy when we start wanting to build out more than just a basic intro page, but we want to have an about page, a services page, a contact page, and we want to be able to have multiple pages within our application. So we'll be moving out of a single page app, and this will be more for you to take onwards and build, but we're going to do the basic framework for routing. And then finally, how to host this all on GitHub for free. So you won't get your own domain. However, underneath the GitHub domain, you can host all of your work for free. All right, so what are we going to do today? Today, we're going to focus on getting familiar with the tools. Let me increase the font size of this real quick and change up the formatting just a little bit. But what are we doing today? So again, this is going to be week 1's intro for Figma, and I'm going to change up the screen size of this real quick. Why can I not grab the handle? There we go. What I want to do is bring this down. There we go. So first of all, before we jump into this, I just want to give you an intro to who I am and what my background is. I have a LinkedIn page where you can see my work history and what I've done and how long I've been in technology, some conferences I've attended and done speeches for, and my current role, where I've come from and the work I've done before. So quite a bit of experience I've been working for the past probably, I don't know, 12, 15 years, maybe longer in this field. So I started back off in 2004 at Borders Books and Music, then AT&T, and then network engineer for a couple global or national telecoms, and then went to work for DreamWorks and Hotwire and Cisco, and now I work for Spotworks. All right. So just so you know who I am and what my background is, I'm not just a nobody who's off the street just teaching. I do have experience. Then today, what we're going to work on is to get to our final product of this style of page. And so we're going to be working towards designing this kind of page where we have our hero section, we have our header up top, and I've called this a CSS cheat sheet because I'm copying it from another place, but showcasing it from another place. But here we have our home, services, and about, and then we have our hero section. So this will be what we focus on next week. And then we have sections 1 and section 2 and section 3. So we have all different layouts that we can possibly work through. And as you can see, the site is going to be responsive. So as we increase the size changes. So the layout will change as we increase or change the screen type and the size. So that'll be our responsive section as well, or responsiveness. to our site. And then finally, we have a contact box down here, really basic. You have your name, your email, and your message, and then you can submit. So we've got buttons. And then finally, we've got a footer. So really what we're trying to do is show patterns and how to break this down into very, very simple, arrangements so it's not so complicated. The reason I bring these things up is because when we go to something kind of like a Dribble, which is kind of a website where you can get different designs. So if we jump into, why is this so annoying at times? Too much stuff going on. Give me 1 second. And let me minimize this. There we go. So if we come to a site like Dribble, Dribble is going to be a site where we can take in different website ideas and get inspiration from these websites. So we can kind of look at a desktop website and see what are the options there are for different layouts. And if we look at these layouts, we can see, oh, here's a cool layout I like, and I want to make it. I just don't know how to make it. So what can I do? I can take a look at, oh, here is their header section in this area. And they've got kind of a showcase section here. They've got another section here and another section here and another section here. So I can break it out into smaller components and smaller patterns. I don't have to build the whole website at once. That can get really, really intimidating. If I take a look at this site, they have a different layout. They've got their same header up here. They've got some boxes down here. So how do I create this but not get overwhelmed and intimidated by all of the things going on? Now I can break it down into box. This would be a box here. This is another box. This is a third box. Maybe in a responsive design, I have a layout where they're all horizontal with each other, and then on a mobile device, they all appear vertical. How do I do that is what we're going to cover today. All right. And so Dribble can be a place for inspiration. Then going into kind of the next phase, what we're going to look at is Figma. And Figma is a site that we're going to get really, really familiar with this week and next week, where we're going to create our designs. So today we're going to go into this, but right now I'm going to give you kind of like a high level of the entire course, and then we'll jump into Figma. So Figma is going to be a place where we look at how to design our site and what to do to bring in different colors and different images, and how do we want our layout to be for our final product. So that's what we're going to cover in Figma this week and next week. We're also going to cover GitHub, and GitHub might be very, very intimidating at first if you've never heard about it or never interacted with it. But GitHub is pretty much a code repository. And what that means is all the code that we type today, everything that we're going to do when we get to Visual Studio Code and type in our actual React framework, we're going to want to save that somewhere, because when we start doing it, it'll be locally on our computers. But when we want to travel, when our computer might crash, when we want to interact between our work computer and our home computer, we need a central place to be able to store this information so that we can keep our work in sync. And that's the purpose of GitHub. And so I'll teach you how to upload your code today to GitHub. And then later on, when you want to start back with your code, you can delete your local copy entirely, which is a feeling we're going to get used to, deleting our work and knowing that we have it safe somewhere else, or just deleting it entirely and starting from scratch. Deleting, getting rid of, it is a strong feeling that we don't want to let go of. We don't want to let go of the work that we've done. So we're going to get used to deleting our work and rebuilding it from scratch over and over and over again to get rid of that feeling of like, oh no, my work is gone, I'm screwed, I want to cry. So we're going to try to move past that feeling. Today, we're going to touch Visual Studio Code. If you have not downloaded this yet, I strongly recommend downloading this today if you want to follow along. If you don't want to follow along and you just want to hang out and listen, that's cool too. But Visual Studio Code will be the code editor that I use throughout this entire course. If you don't like Visual Studio Code and you have a code IDE preference already, interactive development environment is what an IDE is. It's called interactive development environment. If you have one that you already prefer, like maybe Sublime, maybe PyCharm, maybe something else, feel free to use what you're comfortable with and then adapt it to what we're doing. But I'm going to primarily heavily focus with Visual Studio Code because it's the one that I'm most familiar with and one that I like the most out of all of them. Later on in the next couple weeks, we're going to get into Node.js. I might use it next week, but it's not required. The nice thing about Node.js is it runs all the package management for us. So when we get into React, all we have to do is type a single npx create React app in the name of our app, and then we can launch our own React app and modify and customize it from there. So Node is what runs in the back end to be able to support our React framework. And again, what are we building towards? We're building towards this page. If you go and look at the actual code of this page, I'm going to show you something called the developer tools. This will look really intimidating if you've never seen it ever in your life, but this will look really, really weird. But up here in view, in developer tools, it is within the Chrome browser. I'm going to use Chrome browser heavily. Mozilla is another browser, Firefox, same one. So in there, they have the same exact developer tools. You can look at them the exact same way. But every web page you go to will have these elements that you can then inspect and look at. So if we look at this page here, there is a nav bar, and that nav bar is highlighted at the top. There's a hero section, which highlights there. Then if I go to section 1, here's section 1 highlighted here, section 2 highlighted here as well. And if I want to see the code underneath all of this, all I have to do is just expand. And I see, oh, here's a navbar logo. And here's the naming convention this person has used, i.e. this person being me. Here's a navbar menu. And then here are the navbar menu links. And then further on, navbar menu link 1, 2, and 3. And so we can see we have home, services, and about, and that links to 1, 2, and 3. And I can expand this further and we get home, we get services, and we get about. And so we'll start to understand what happens within the web page, within the developer tools. And then when we have a problem, we can start to troubleshoot based on the information we have here. If you don't understand this today, that's okay. So I'm going to pause there for a moment before we jump into Figma and just ask if there are any questions. Cool. Oh, also, I should mention that if you want to ask a question, feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom chat thing. And then I will be able to see whether you have a question or not. And I think you can from the participants window, I think you can ask and raise your hand. I can't exactly remember where the raise hand function is. If anyone knows where the raise hand is, can you type it in the chat? I personally can't remember where the raise hand is. I don't maybe can't even see it because I'm the host. Sweet. Thank you. And we'll do an ask to unmute, and then you can ask your question. So Puta1 has raised their hand or their hand, and I've asked them to unmute, and then they can ask their question if they'd like to, or lower their hand. So hopefully that covers the basics. All right. Perfect. So I'm going to move on. One thing I do want to keep is this course to be interactive as much as possible. And I know that's kind of hard with so many people, but feel free to ask questions in the chat. If I'm moving too fast, I'll be able to see them in the chat. Or again, raise your hand and I'll be able to help, or I'll be able to take a break and ask or answer your question. Okay, so first what we're going to do is we're going to go to the site called figma.com. And in Figma, I have already logged into Figma, but if I don't want to log out because then I have to do the whole login credentials, but you can go to Figma, figma.com. And from here, if you just go to figma.com, I'm already logged in, and then you'll be able to get to a page that looks like this. You'll have these 4 things at the top. Don't worry about what I have all down here. You probably will have nothing when you first log in. But when you go to Figma and you create an account and you log in, hopefully you've already done this. you'll have a new design file option up here. You'll have a new Figma Jamboard, which is a collaboration board. You'll have a slide deck to present, and then you'll be able to bring in external files as well into Figma. But we're going to focus on new design file. And what are we going to be really covering in this new design file is just the basics of Figma. And Figma is one of my favorite tools to be able to design, prototype, and create the layout that I kind of want for my site. If you're not familiar with this tool at all, don't worry. We're going to go through some very basics. I'm going to show you some layering, some colors, and some text, and figure out how to put all of that together. Right, so I'm just going to wait for this thing to load. And sometime today, it should finish. Oh no. Always has to go awry when it's live, doesn't it? Normally it shouldn't take that long. There we go. Now we have our Figma board here, and we have some stuff here on the left-hand side, and we have some stuff here on the right-hand side. None of this makes any sense, so you're going to get a brief tour of this tool while I go through it. And here we have pages, which are, well, actually, we'll start off with the name. So here it says untitled. We can change the title to My First Figma Layout. Done. And so now when I go back to files, I will have a file here that says My First Figma Layout right here. And so there's nothing in there right now. So you'll see this PNG style background, this checkerboard background. There's nothing in here. So I'm going to double click and open it back up, and we come back to the same exact place. And I'm going to draw in what's called a frame. So a frame is your basic box for whatever type of device you're designing for. So if you're designing for a phone, you can have a preset phone with the preset dimensions, 430 by 932 for an iPhone 14 or 15. You can have a preset for the iPhone SE for 320 or 568. You can have a preset for the iPhone 8, or you can design for a tablet, your iPads, your Surface Pro, or you can design for desktops, which would be bigger, which is MacBook Air, desktops, wireframes, or a TV. Different preset Figma devices are here. So I'm going to grab desktop, and you don't have to do this, but I'll just grab desktop, and it's rather large. Cool. And we have our design layout here for what we're going to work on, and it's just a white background, and that's all it is. So with our frame, we can change up the background, we can change up the size, we can do a lot of things. But for now, what I want to show is what's called the layout grid. All web pages are about 12 columns wide, and this is going to help us figure out how to place our items when we design our site. So I'm going to toss in a layout grid, and in this layout grid, it comes automatically with this horrible looking grid. And I want to change this to a more website-centric grid. So towards the bottom, and I don't know if this is visible or not, if there's a way to bring this up. There it is. So there's a grid option here. And I'm going to click columns, and that'll expand all these options. Now, the default is 5. I'm going to change this up to 12 because that's how many columns are in a standard website. When we start designing web pages, we'll start to see that all the web pages have a column width of 12, and we can dictate how many of those columns we want to use with Flexbox or with Grid or with another type of layout design. And when we get into CSS, I'll talk to you about what that means. So for now, we'll get to stretch, or 12, we'll stretch, and we'll set a margin, and we'll get into what margin and padding are when we get into CSS. But for now, margin is what controls the outside, top and bottom, left and right of the page. So here, if I type in 100, you'll see the outsides change, and the columns will shrink and adjust automatically. If I change this up to 200, you'll see the outside width right here changing. And so this is for left and right margin, not top and bottom margin. Most of the time on CSS, if it's just automatic margin, then it'll be top, left, right, and bottom. But for now, I'm going to type in 100. And then for our gutter, this will be the space in between each one of these. I'll leave it at 20, but if you want to play around with it, we can make it 50. So this is just a background. This is just to help us align items, and that's it. Now, inside of this frame, all I want to do is refer back to this And I'm just going to create these boxes. I'm not going to create the whole thing. We're just going to create the header box. We're going to create the navbar box, the header or the hero box, the section 1, section 2, section 3, contact, and footer boxes. That's all we're going to do today in our Figma file. So in our Figma file, we're going to draw rectangles. So down here at the bottom, let me see if I can move this. Can I? I don't think I can move this panel. But down here at the bottom, let's see. Yeah, it's not going to let me. Maybe it can. No, it's all good. Hopefully you can see this at the bottom. There's a rectangle, and this rectangle tool will allow me to draw a rectangle up here at the top. So why am I drawing a rectangle at the top? Because here in our webpage, this section here is really just a rectangle. And I want to kind of get used to seeing websites in terms of rectangles, because it'll make it easier to break down and you'll see the patterns a lot easier. Now in here, we can play around with the width, the height, we can play around with the shading, the color, all of that. But for right now, I'm going to leave it as a box. And all I'm going to do is just change the fill type to a different color. And we'll go with this type of color right here. And close that up. So we have our first header section. I'm going to get rid of the back layout grid because it can be annoying at times. So I'm just going to delete it. So anytime you add something here next to it, you can always delete it and it goes away. Same thing with the rectangle. If I don't like an effect, I can delete the effect. Oh no, my rectangle went away. It didn't go away. All it's done is change the color to the default, which is no fill at all, which will be transparent. So I want to add a fill again, and I want to change the color again. And let's bring this color back to about where it was, right about there, and cool. So now we have our little rectangle, and I want to pop in some text. And we'll drop in some text. Now, the interesting thing about text is we can drop it in wherever we want to, and we'll make this better. Now, with text, we can change up the styles of text over here on the side as well. And I can change the typography to be whatever I want it to be. For now, I'll just leave it enter, but I will increase the font size to 36, and I'll center the font, and I'll make it aligned in the middle. So right now, this header might not be in the complete middle. So just to snap it in place, just for our aesthetics, we can snap it in the middle just by aligning our columns as so. Now, I want to direct your attention to the layers. In the layers, we've got our header and our rectangle. Notice how header is above the rectangle. If I take the rectangle and I put it above the header, our text disappears. These are layers within, and so this rectangle header is going to take precedence because it is on top, and the text header is not seen because it's below. So we'll show you how to do this in CSS as well. It's very possible, but I want to show you that layers do matter. So if something disappears and you're like, wait, I know it's there, come back to the layers on the side and you'll be able to see it. So again, just want to show, here's a rectangle and here's a header. Now, I do want to show something that in the rectangle, if I keep the rectangle here and I change the opacity, here's the opacity underneath the fill on the right-hand side, here's our color and here's our fill. We're going to change this up to 50% and our header comes through, it peeks through. And so you can use this for effect. Now you can either change the opacity of the header or you can change the opacity of the text. But if we switch this around, that header is going to come darker because now it's on the top layer and the opaque background is behind. So just be aware, whatever type of effect you want, play around with the layers, play around with the headers. Maybe you do want to have the text behind the box. Maybe you want to have it in front. So just play around with it based on what you want. I'm going to change this back to 100%. So one thing I talked about before was getting used to deleting and restarting. We've built this awesome frame. We've built this great little header, and we've even typed some text into our header, but we're still not feeling it, or maybe we made a mistake and somehow this whole thing got deleted. Oh no, how do we get back to that? Well, obviously we can undo and it'll come back, but sometimes We don't want to undo, we want to start fresh, and we just want to get rid of it and start new. So we can delete it and we can start fresh with a whole different frame, and we can draw our custom frame. Ah, I like my custom frame a little bit more. It feels a little bit more breathable. Okay, cool. Now I'm going to draw in my same rectangle as I did before, and I'm going to color it the same as I did before, and pop it in, and let's change that up slightly. There we go. And now I'm going to pop in the same text as I had before. All right, so boom. And we'll go with header. Sweet. So there's my header, snapped in place, and it looks like this is much more my speed. I like this. So again, getting used to deleting my work and restarting. So I'm going to pause there and just ask if there are any questions. I know this sounds very basic, but just wanted to pause and see if there are any questions before moving on. All right. Okay, let's keep going. So now we're going to do this for the next three sections. The next three sections are the hero section, section 1, section 2, section 3, the contact, and the footer. So we're going to have 4 total boxes in the middle, 1, 2, 3, 4, and a contact. So 5 total boxes in the middle, and then our footer. So since we have a header, Control C, Control V, copy and paste, and I can drop this whole thing down here. Oh no, I didn't get the header as well as the text. I just got the box. Crap. Okay, so I can delete that. One thing that's missing, if I want to copy both of these together as a grouping, all I have to do is put these two together. So I can hold one down, shift click, or just highlight both of them together, either way, and right click, and I can do group selection or Command G for a shortcut, but it'll group my selection together. So now when I come over to the left-hand pane, I can see both the header and the rectangle in a group. So now when I click on this particular box and I hit Control C, Control V, I will have an actual copy paste of the text and the box, and I can change up my text here to be something else like footer. Cool. All right, now I have 5 sections in here that I have to make. So what I'm going to do is start drawing rectangles for these 5 sections. So we've got our what's called hero section. And again, this will be a random color. I'm not going to be very specific here, but just a color that is close to something decent. There we go. And we're going to pop in another text box. And we'll call this hero section. This sometimes is called hero section. This might be called showcase. This might be called just section 1. It's very much up to you what you want to call this, but as long as you're consistent in your declaration of this, that's all that really matters. So that way, when you refer back to it, you know it's the hero, the showcase, or section 1, up to you. So in this case, I'm going to call it the hero section. All right, I'm going to group these together. So again, highlight both of these, and I've got them together here, and I'm just going to group the selection. There we go. So I can copy this again, paste down here, and now I'm going to create a section 1. And I'm going to change the background of this as well to being something, there we go. And let's call this section 1. And I can paste again, which will be my section 2. Section 2. And we'll go again, section 3. Oh no, I don't have enough room. How do I increase the space that I have? I just take my frame and I can drag it down. So now I have a little bit more space. And I'm going to zoom out. Whoa, that's a bit too far. Let's go in with 50%. There we go. So I can take this footer and I can drag the footer down. Oops. I want to take the group and drag the group down. There we go. And that is not what I wanted to do for that group. So these two got tossed into a group. Oh no, I have a couple options. They're all tossed into groups here. So my mistake. Let's toss this group out. And let's get these two, section 1, rectangle 1, into group 4. There we go. And let's get group 3 out of this one. There we go. All right, this is now a mess, and we can fix this up real quick. So here's a section 1. Here's our section 2. Here's our section 3, which we will change up. Section 3. And we'll change the background of section 3 to be that color. There we go. And I'm not trying to be exact because we're just getting an idea of how to do layouts. So not trying to be exact, just trying to get a rough sketch or a rough idea. So we've got our group items here. I'm going to delete that one. That was that one. Okay. Wrong one. Okay, so cool. And then we're going to do our final contact section, which will be, and there's a group 5. So this will be our contact section. And in here, we can change up the color to be that greenish color again. And we'll make this a contact us. Okay, cool. And we've got our footer, bring that up. And then we can go back to our frame and collapse this down. There we go. So we've got a basic layout of our entire web page. This looks terrible. It doesn't look good at all. However, it is our header, our hero, our section 1, our section 2, section 3, and our contact us and our footer down here. So it's following the exact same path of our page. So now we can go in and create sections on splitting this and this. So we're going to work on that one next week. But today, what I want to do is, because we have a small group of people, I did want to ask, if you're very new to coding or if you're trying to learn how to do this, if anyone wants to display or share their screen just to show and confirm what they've done, right now would be a good opportunity. So I'm going to pause here and see if anyone wants to try to showcase their work on Figma, if you've been following along. If not, that's okay. But what I'm going to do for now is we're going to keep this. Actually, what we're going to do is delete it. And if you want to build it together while I'm building it and then show it, by all means, take this opportunity to practice. Oh, perfect. Welcome to the course. Thank you for letting me know. Let me know if this is too much information or if I'm going too fast or if this is too simple. But the hope is to keep it at a pace for very first time beginners. Sweet. Good to know. Well, to make it easier then, what we'll do is I'm going to delete all this, and that's okay. Some people might get afraid when deleting because it means they don't have anything to follow, but it's okay. I'm going to build it again because I think getting that deleting feeling and watching everything go away, that scared feeling of, oh no, I'm lost and I don't know what to do now, that's an okay feeling to have when you're learning. So we're going to delete this. We're going to start all over again. So I'm going to delete it all and we're going to build it from scratch again. So here we go. We've got our frame. And the frame is your baseline for what we're going to build. So this is the most important kind of container. Everything else in Figma goes into the frame. So we're going to draw our first rectangle. And if you want to draw other shapes, you certainly can. There's a line, there's an arrow, ellipses, polygons. We're going to stick to rectangles today. And so here's a rectangle. I want to just draw a rectangle. And the rectangle is up there. Now what I want to do is I want to give a color to the rectangle. So here is our fill on the right-hand side. And in the fill, I'm just going to give it a color on the slider that I think is okay for what I want. You can pick whatever color you want. Does not have to be exact. It's okay. And pop it in. And inside of this header, I want to pop in the word header. So I'm going to grab the T bar, the text bar down below, and I'm going to type in, maybe I'll just type it in here and then drag it in there later on, but I'll type in header here. If I want to change the font, the size, I can do all of that on the right here, bring the size up to a 64. Once I click off that box, bring the size up to a 64 if I want to, and increase it or just leave it where it is or decrease it, make it smaller. So I'll make it a 36 for now, and we'll pop the header up here and we can center it automatically. So the cool thing with Figma is we've got these centering tools. So I know when the box is in the center, I get a horizontal and vertical line to show me it is perfectly centered. And then I'm going to stretch this out to the sides to snap to the rectangle. And I'm going to bring these two together, highlight them both, or if I don't want to highlight, I can choose one, hold down Shift, highlight the second one, and we're going to group the selection together. You don't have to do this. It's not required, but it is something that does make layout design much easier to do. So now that I have group 1, all I have to do is Control-C, Control-V, and now I have group 2. I can't see group 2 separate than group 1 because wait a minute, group 2, when I pasted it, it's on top of group 1. So now all I have to do is drag group 2 off, and I can take it down here, and we're just going to change the word to footer. Cool. Now I have my group 1 and group 2. I can start making my sections. The cool thing is these are all just rectangles. So Control-C, Control-V again. Now I have my third group, and I can copy this one down, and I can just expand this one as well. So this is different than the first time we did it. I just copied my header and just expanded it down a little bit. And now I'm just going to change the color. Cool. And I can change this up to whatever I want to call it. I want to be consistent with it. So this is sometimes known as the showcase in some tutorials. Sometimes it's known as the hero in other tutorials. Other teachers call it section 1. It's very much up to you on what you want to call it, but be consistent. So in every project you do, pick one. Personally, for this course, I'm going to call it all section 1, 2, 3, and 4 just to make it easy. But I know on this one, I've called it a hero section because it is the standout section. Any website we go to. So if I go to like Node.js, I go to the primary site here. Here's their main site. And this is just all they have is their hero section, and that's it. If I go to their learn section, then it's much more robust. If I go to their about section, they've got a community, or they've got a sitemap here that I can start to go down into the text. But their primary site is just this. If I go into, let's say, Node or Visual Studio Code, and I go to their main website, this is their header section up here. And this box, pretty simple, is their hero section. Then we've got a section 1 here. Then we've got section 2 here. Then we've got section 3. Then we've got section 4. Then we've got section 5. So we've got a bunch of sections, and you keep doing this for however long you want to go. They've got another section that has a bunch of boxes in it. And finally, they've got a footer down below. So when I start to see web pages as boxes and sections, it doesn't become as intimidating. When I want to learn to code, I can break it down into smaller chunks. And so that idea is something that I want to try to continue to reiterate, is that there are patterns. And once you see the pattern, coding becomes really, really simple. So patterns are kind of everywhere. Again, if we go to Dribble and we take a look at some patterns of web pages. Here again, we've got a header, we've got a box with a few boxes in the box, we've got another box with a few boxes in the box. Once I get the layout, then I can start doing the plug and play for the back end. But once I get the layout, then everything is easy. So I'm going to go back to Figma, and we've got our hero section done. So now I'm going to copy and paste again with our group 1 and Control-C, Control-V, and we've got our fourth one. So let's bring this down and expand it a little bit. And if I want to make these two the exact same, all I have to do is I can take a look at the size of this one is 1232 by 288. If I want to have a static, meaning width of 1232, which is fine, that's the page width. But if I want to have a height of, let's say 300, cool. And then I can have a height of 300 for this one as well. So now I can make it a little more exact to my liking. If I want to change the width, I can make this 1100, and then it gives it a different kind of look and feel to it. And I can copy that or move that. And I have that center line to help me align it to the exact center. So now I can have sort of a wide, narrow kind of look and feel to the site. But I'm going to change this back to 1232 and give it the exact sort of width of our site. All right. So now I'm going to create this one. I'm going to call this one section 1. I'm going to get rid of that section 1 there. I still got to figure out, like, do I want to call it Showcase Hero section? I still, like, because I've got this site called a hero, I want to stick to this, but I've changed my habit to where I now call everything section 1, and this is an older site that I haven't gone back and revamped, but I think I'm going to, for the purposes of this one, try to keep it consistent with the site, just so it's very clear that the showcase of the hero section is really what drives the theme of the site. So if we come back to Visual Studio Code, this sort of box up here really drives, when you first come here and look at it, it dictates what all these other boxes are going to look and feel like, color scheme wise, layout wise. You get an idea of just visual appeal. Oh, there's going to be a big box on the side here with some text on this side. Okay, cool. Then I come here. All right, I see more text, but mostly boxes. And then again, that idea of text and box. So that's kind of what drives. So that's why they call this the hero section or the showcase section, because it is the main driver of the site. So back in our Figma file, we're going to call it Showcase Hero, and then we're going to take our group 1 and copy it again. Control-C, Control-V, take it down, and we're going to increase the size of this one to be 300. And we're going to change this text to be section 2. All right, and we're going to change the color. And if we want to make it the exact same color, we can just come down into Selection Colors and copy this color by clicking on it, Control-C, going to section 2, and saying Control-V, and boom, now we have that same color as the showcase. So idealistically, in a web page, you would have a sort of alternating color scheme, color pattern, because that's kind of really nice on the eyes. So when you have a hero section, your next section will be kind of a white background. Your third section will have some color, and your fourth section will have kind of an opposite. So you get this sort of opposite effect of your color schemes in your site. All right. And then we'll jump back into, and again, you don't have to do it that way, but that's just a very common way to do it. So I noticed that I probably don't have enough room here. I can force it in, but instead I'm going to increase the size of my frame, and I'm going to bring that down, and there we go. And then I can, whoops, I didn't grab the group, I grabbed the individual. And I can drag that down. And so now I'm going to grab my last hero section, Control-C, Control-V it, and we're going to bring it down. And we've got section 3. Cool. And then finally, we have our probably contact form that we're going to build out at the bottom. And we'll make this 300. And we got to increase this again. All right, cool, no problem. Let's increase the size of that. We're going to go to our group 2 and drag that down. It's probably too much space, which is okay. This is, again, just a rough idea. And we're going to bring this one down. And we're going to call this the contact form. And there we go. We might want to change the color. So in the contact form, whoops, probably not that one, but we want to change it to this color that we had in section 2. So I'm going to go down to selection colors, copy that, whatever style of green that is that I chose, pop that in and paste that. So I'm going to bring the contact footer, sorry, the footer up to the contact, join those together, and go back to my frame and tighten that up. There we go. So we now have our full website. That's a bit too small for my liking, but let's go with 45%. So we have our full site. We have header, showcase, section 1, section 2, section 3, contact form, and our footer. This looks so gorgeous. People are going to want to buy whatever product we're selling, which we're not selling any product right now, but it's okay. It looks beautiful. It looks terrible, but it's okay. This is going to give us an idea. Nice work. There we go. All right. So we've got a header, we've got a hero section, we got section 1, section 2, section 3, and a footer. Cool. So let's work on like taking away those spaces. Yeah, nice job. So in there, what I do see is there's some spaces in between. We can drag these up and make them tight if you want to. You don't have to, but if you want to have something more like this, that's all you got to do is just group them and drag them up. So done. Now we can move on to some bit of coding. I know this is going to be a little hard, a little challenging, but we're going to put this together on our very first web page. So now if you've got Visual Studio Code, I'm going to urge you to launch Visual Studio Code. So I'm going to share out my screen for Visual Studio Code, and we will start to code a little bit. So, all right. So I've opened up my Visual Studio Code over here. And right now, when you open it, there's probably going to be nothing in here. Maybe you have Explorer Editor. Maybe it just looks like this. Maybe you have a getting started. If you've never opened this before, if you've just installed it, maybe you've got a getting started. You can close all those tabs. There'll be an X next to them. And you can just close out the getting started and get to this blank page. What I'm going to ask you to do on your desktop or in your preferred file structure, wherever you feel comfortable, I'm going to ask you to create a folder called Learn to Code. So I'm going to create a folder on my desktop, and I'm going to call it Learn to Code. So, whoops. So untitled folder, where is it? Desktop. So I'm going to call this folder, I'm going to rename this to Learn to Code. Learn to Code. And this sits on my desktop. And inside Learn to Code, there's absolutely nothing. So it's a blank, empty folder right now. And what I'm going to do is create a file inside of here. And the way I'm going to do that is, where did it go? The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use the command line, or on Windows, you can generally type in create file. I don't think I can even create a file from just here on a Mac. I've never actually done that. I've always used I've always done it from, let's see, I don't think I can create a new file. But if you're in here, what I'm going to do is open a command prompt terminal and type in Learn to Code, touch, index.html. So what is really, really, really important is this word index and the dot and the HTML file tag at the end. So if you're on Windows, you can right click and create new file. I don't think you can do that on a Mac right away, so I had to go to command line, but it's okay. Regardless, you're going to go to index.html. You're going to type in index, the word .html. This is really, really important that the word is index. If you call it anything else, web pages, when you start to use React, if you don't call it index, you're going to have an error. For the purposes of learning HTML, you don't have to call it index. You can call it whatever you want, but I do want to get you in the habit of recognizing that index.html is a very important file. So index.html, the dot is the separator between the name of the file and the dot at the end is the type of the file. Now, if you're on a Windows machine, you might not be able to see the .html. You might have to change your settings to be able to see those extensions. And I can't remember how to do that off the top of my head, but I think on Windows, see file extensions, there should be a way to, there we go, show hide group, check file name extensions box under the File Explorer in the View tab, show hide group. And so that will hopefully be able to get you to see the file extension here. Now, the reason I bring up the file extension is when we open up our inside Visual Studio Code. By the way, I do want to take a pause and just ask, how many people have Visual Studio Code installed? If you can just type in the chat, installed, that would be great. If you don't have it installed, type not installed. Cool. All right, sweet. Cool, so it looks like most people have it installed. Awesome. And are you able to follow along with what I'm doing, or am I moving too fast? Have you created a desktop folder? Have you created index.html? You can just type in yes or no, or type in what you have been able to do or have not been able to do. Cool. All right. Cool. So let's keep going. Okay. So one thing I'm going to, I think in Windows, if you're in here in Visual Studio Code, we're going to do the file open folder, not open, but open folder. And open folder, we're going to navigate to that desktop folder that we just created called Learn to Code. And we go to desktop, and here's the Learn to Code folder on my desktop. So under the desktop, there's that Learn to Code folder. I'm going to open that folder. And then my Visual Studio Code will change to here's my, yes, I trust the authors. So here's my Learn to Code. And here is my index.html. There's nothing in there, but you'll see this like index.html. I can close that out, but it's still here. So in Visual Studio Code, this is going to be a bit advanced, but I do want to get you used to it because we are going to start using it. Up at the top, you should have a terminal option and a new terminal. And you'll get this scary looking prompt called command line interface. So it automatically opens up in the place that says Learn to Code, because that's where the code editor opened the folder from. So hopefully you have Learn to Code here, and you can do a few things from here. You can do a, I think on Windows it's a dir, but on Mac or Linux it's an ls, so it's index.html. If you type in, I think ls might work on Windows. You'll have to forgive me. I'm on a Mac, so I can't remember Windows commands off the top of my head at the moment. But actually, let me know, do you have Windows, do you have Mac, or do you have another operating system? So if you can let me know, you have Windows, all right. So I think it's a dir on Windows. Cool. All right, so we have Windows and we have Mac. All right, let's do this. On Windows, I think it's going to be a dir. On Mac, it's going to be ls. And so we'll be able to see index.html. On Mac, what I'm going to do is there's a rm command, and I think it should be the same on Windows, but I'm going to get rid of the index.html file. And so we'll do an ls again, and you'll see it disappear from here. Again, we're going to get used to deleting files and recreating them. And so here it's touch on a Mac. And I think touch might exist on Windows, but I am not sure. but being able to right click in the actual file folder window, and you'll be able to create new file, I think, from these options in Windows. So you should be able to create the index.html from there as well. But now that we have the index.html file created, we can go into the file, and in here within Visual Studio Code, we can type in the keyword HTML. Don't hit enter yet, because we have some options available to us. Let me know if you don't see these options in your version, but I think these will be default, where you can hit HTML5. That's the one we want. And so if I click HTML5, I'll get this really strange looking thing here. It looks really weird. Don't know what it is, but I can delete it and hit HTML and :5, and that's the one I want. And this gives me the preamble. I can't remember, there's a word for it, but it gives me the basic structure of HTML so that I can start typing in here what I want. And what I'm going to do is save this file the way it is. Just going to save it. And I'm going to jump into the Windows box and navigate to my desktop Learn to Code. This will be the path. I think on Windows you can still do present working directory and be able to navigate here as well. But we're going to go here and hit enter. And then I get a index of here. Now, I'm going to back up and slow down and just ask, were you able to create the index HTML file? Maybe it might be better if I... Okay, cool. No, okay. Can you, actually, let me just unmute you and see if...
How did you get to the code?
Hey, go ahead and talk to me about where you're at and what's going on.
Oh, yeah. Hello. Yes. So how do you get to the coding page again? I don't. I just installed the Visual Studio Code.
Cool.
But
You created your folder Learn to Code, right?
yes, on the
Cool.
desktop. Okay.
So on the desktop, if I delete that file, which is okay, I'm going to empty the trash. So I've deleted everything. So in here, it's a blank file, a blank folder, right?
Huh?
So you're going to right
Yeah,
click.
yeah. It's the normal Windows folder. Yeah. Okay.
Perfect. Yep. And you're going to right click in there, and you should have a create option in here.
What?
Create, like a create
Oh no,
file.
I don't have the HTML index thing yet.
Yeah. So do you know how to create a new file from scratch?
No.
Okay. Do you know Notepad?
Okay. Let me open that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in Notepad, what you're going to do is File, Save As.
I like to top it. Oh, okay. No, just click save as. Okay.
Yep. And then you're going to save as index.html in that Learn to Code folder.
Huh? It's only text document thing. What?
Yeah, you want to save as .html. So you can change the extension to .html.
No, I only have two options. It's either all files or text document.
Okay,
Uh,
that's fine. Save it as a text document.
uh-huh. Okay.
And then inside that Learn to Code folder, you have a new text document, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and it's called index.txt.
I'm in the folder now. And just a normal text document. Yeah.
Yep. Do you see the extension .txt?
Okay. When I click it in, it say, do I want to open it with Visual Studio Code? So do I choose that?
No, you don't want to open the file. You just want to change the extension.
Oh, okay.
So you want to rename
rename. Rename. Okay.
And then you want to change the .txt to .html.
Dot HTML. Okay.
HTML.
HTML. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. Got it.
cool. Then you're going to open that in Visual Studio Code.
Ah. Now open. Okay. Open it. Do I want to allow untrusted files? Yeah. Open. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay. Okay. I mean there's no line of code. Yeah. It's just
perfect.
okay.
All right. So now you're going to type in HTML. Don't hit enter. Just type in HTML and you should get a drop down. You should have like these visuals.
Huh? Okay, there's something, nothing popping up, yeah, but
And if nothing pops up, that's okay. We'll go to, let's just copy a generic template. HTML header.
yeah, here's what on my screen right now. Just one.
Yep, that's okay. Let me see if I can find a HTML template. And we're just gonna grab like a basic HTML template and you can paste that in. Why is it so hard just to find a specific like simple template? It's okay. So what I'm going to do is copy and paste this into the chat, and hopefully you can copy that and pop it into your editor.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right.
Just press enter. Yeah.
That's it. So now I'm going to put you back on mute, and I think you're caught up to where we are.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Cool. My pleasure. All right. So now that we're here, what we're going to do is we're just going to type in these sections that we created. So we have a header, we have a showcase, we have a section 1, section 2, section 3, contact form, and footer. So we're just going to type those in here. And we're going to type in header, hit enter. What we don't want to do is hit enter because it'll change it into a tag in here. We want to hit header, escape, and then enter. So that means we want to have it as a clear text. We do not want to have it as this. That is not what we want because it won't appear on the web page. We want to have header. We want to have showcase. We want to have section 1. We'll have section 2, section 3, contact form, and footer. So why am I doing all of this? Because I'm going to save it. And now when I go into my HTML file and I go into my LearnToCode directory, I'm going to have the index.html file here. And I'm going to click it and I get header, showcase, section 1, section 2, section 3, contact form, and footer. And it looks terrible. It looks horrifically bad. However, this is our very first web page. I'm going to pause here and ask if this worked for everyone. Was everyone able to type in? Ooh, that is new, but it's all good. Hopefully that helps. So in here, I just want to check if everyone is able to type in header, showcase, section 1, section 2, section 3, contact form, and footer. Was everyone able to do that? Sweet. And then were you able to navigate to the file and show it on your browser internally? Okay. So when you navigated to your desktop site, what happened? Actually, I'll just unmute you. That'll be probably easier.
Yes, thank you. I mean, I pressed I follow the text, yeah, and now I don't know what next
Oh
to do.
yeah, so you can open in your browser. So you're going to navigate in your browser, and I don't exactly know where this would be in your path, but you're going to want to find where your desktop folder is and find that path. So I think inside Windows, you can do a get info to find out where exactly your path is for your desktop, but you're going to go to file, something along these lines here, and go to the location. So you can navigate directly in your Chrome browser to your file. Let me see in like Windows, uh, Chrome, navigates folder. Uh, oh, there you go. So you can go to File, Open File,
Uh,
and then find where it is from there in Chrome.
what I I use Edge.
That's fine. I don't recommend using Edge for the course. I recommend using Chrome or Mozilla, but it's okay. But you can go to File, Open from Edge, and then you can find the file and open index.html.
Wait, how do you do that? You just right click and then it appears the open file.
Yeah, you should be able to go to File and Open File.
Okay, apologies. I don't know how to do that, but yeah, I think it's okay for me.
I think you'd be able to go to Local Explorer, File Explorer, always. Well, that's not what you want. Uh, oh, wow. That's going to be complicated. I would suggest really getting Chrome,
Okay,
which will be a lot easier. Yeah.
okay,
Seems like Edge is a bit more complicated. Um, but in the meantime, I'm going to put you back on mute,
yeah.
and then we'll keep
Thank
moving.
you.
Yeah, my pleasure. All right, so if we can get to this point, all right, so we've got our header section, showcase, section 1, section 2, section 3, section contact form, and footer. Now, it appears really, really, really ugly. And it's going to be ugly for a while until we get our CSS, until we fix this up to look a little bit more like this. So how do we go from this to this when we have this? So what we're going to do is wrap each one of these in what is called a div. And div is something that is called short for division, short for divider. We're going to call div, and we're going to use this notation. And this is going to be really, really ugly notation, but I'm going to delete this real quick and type it out full hand. It is open bracket. So it is open bracket, the word div, which is short for divider. The full form is divider. That's exactly what it is. But in HTML code, it is simply just known as div. And then we're going to close that bracket automatically, and then, or Visual Studio Code will fill it in. But I do want to highlight something that is really important. This is an open tag right now. So this by itself is an open tag. We're going to get more into HTML later on, but I'm just giving you an intro into HTML. We'll go over the nuances of it later on, but this is that slash here is very important. So between the div and the open bracket is a slash, that symbol right there, that closes the tag. So that symbol, the slash symbol, closes the tag. Very important and will come up a lot. Most code editors, excuse me, will do that automatically for you. So Visual Studio Code is nice that way. It will do it for you. So typically in Visual Studio Code, all you have to do is type in div and hit tab, and you get both tags. So inside of header, or inside of that div, we're going to put in the word header. Then we're going to draw a couple more divs. We're going to do a div here, and inside this div, we're going to put showcase. So showcase. So here we have div, header, div, showcase. What I'm going to do is just save this, and see how the spaces I have here? It won't matter. So I'm going to refresh this. So here's the refresh button. I'm going to refresh, and I've got header and showcase now on separate lines. So I've got header on one line because of this div, this divider. I've got showcase on another line because I've got this divider. And so we're going to go ahead and do that for the other section 1, 2, 3, and 4. Just wanted to check in with the other folks if you're able to follow along. If not, let me know and we can figure out how to get you up to speed. But for the other folks, apologies, but for Funtip, for Jesse, for Rataniwan, for Tinawat, are you able to follow along? Or is this going too fast? You can go ahead and type in the chat. And then if it's too fast, we'll probably slow down and troubleshoot. Cool. Thanks. You know what?
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for letting me know. Are you a
Thank-
first-time coder or do you have experience?
I have experience.
Cool. All right. So this is all very basic, I hope.
Yes, I know about the tag of HTML.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Ratanavan. All right. I'm going to put you back on mute and keep on going. All right. Perfect. So I'm going to pop these into their own separate divs. And we have our contact form, and finally, we have our footer. So last div, and pop in our footer. So now we're starting to look a little bit more like a web page. We're starting to look a little bit better. I'm going to save this and go back to our page, and I'm going to refresh here again. I'm going to click the refresh button up here. And whoa, hey, we're getting a bit closer now. Now we have everything stacked as opposed to everything all horizontal. Now we actually have sections. So now we're starting to get a bit closer to what we had here. Okay, cool. Now we're going to go into what's called CSS styling. So we have a little bit of time, so hopefully this won't be too fast, but what I'm going to do is just add some style to this so we can at least get close to what this is. And in here, I'm going to create another file. So for you, Tuan, you can do another notepad and you can save it as what's called a CSS file. So I'm going to just call this style.css. And here's our style.css file. So we have index.html and we have style.css. In our Learn to Code folder, we have two files, index.html and style.css. Okay, so in our style.css, what are we going to do? We're just going to type in for our div. We're going to put in a background color, and we're going to make this one green. And we'll see how it looks. We're going to press save, and we're going to go back here, and we're going to refresh. We're going to refresh. Wait, something should be green here. Why is it not showing up? Oh, so just because I've created the file and just because I've typed something in and I've typed in div, did I type this correct? Yeah, we're going to get into this in a little bit in the future. I just want to show you how to link this up together. But I need to link and let index.html know that style.css exists. So this is going to get a little complicated, and this is starting to get into coding, but I'm going to type in the word link, and hopefully within your Visual Studio Editor, you should be able to see link CSS, and you can click that. Otherwise, you can type out this whole thing, and I'll pop it into the chat, but I'll pop it in here just so you have it. But now I have style.css. I'm going to save it, and this reference is to the local style CSS, so we'll always take a local. And I'm going to refresh this, and there's our beautiful green. Yay, we're getting closer. So we have this beautiful green color. If I want to change the color, I can change it to blue. Awesome. And we'll refresh here, and it changes to blue. So I know now that my style sheet and my index HTML are linked together. Now, why did that work? Because I'm calling this tag in CSS. We're going to explore CSS a lot more in the future, but I just want to get you familiar with it. This div applies to all of these divs. So we don't want all of our divs to have the same color. We want to split them out uniquely. Okay, so how do we do that? So we're going to do div class header, and we're going to give each one of these a class name. Class showcase and class section 1. I'm going to stop there because I'm going to show how to how to take header, how to take showcase, how to take section 1, and to style CSS. And this part, I'm going to move a little bit fast because we're going to keep coming back to this for next time. But I want to show kind of, okay, this div idea is great, but I don't want this div. So I'm going to get rid of all this. And I'm going to type in dot header. And I'm going to type in background color for blue. Now I'm going to come back here. And now, wait a minute. Why didn't that work? Oh, I didn't save it. Okay. I was trying to be smooth. All right. So here's our header only in blue. Nice. Now we want it to have our header, and we want it to have our section 1 blue. So I want these two, header and section 1, to be the same color. Showcase hero to be another color. Section 2 to be another color as hero. So how to get header and section 1 as the same color? Well, I'm just going to add in a comma to header dot section 1. And I'm going to go back to our document, and I'm going to do a refresh, and now our header and section 1 are the same color. And then I'm going to add in section 3 and footer as well. So what do I have to do? Well, I can add section 3 and footer, which I'm going to do. If I could type properly, 3 and dot footer. If I save this and come back here and refresh, nothing is going to happen. Did I do something wrong? Technically, no, I haven't done anything wrong, but why it's not working is because in my index HTML, I have a class for my header, I have a class for my section 1, but I don't have any class for my section 3, and I don't have any class for my section footer. So I just have to add class section 3 and class footer. Now, when I save this, I can come back here and I can do a refresh, and there we go. We have header, we have section 1, we have section 3, and we have footer, all with our blue tags. All right, so we're going to do the same thing for section 2 and the contact form. So we've already done the showcase, and I want that to be the same for section 2. So class section 2 and class contact form. Now, you're going to get used to seeing class names quite a bit. This is going to come up a lot, and it is going to look something very similar to this in every section or every web page you go to. If we take a look at this web page, we've got our div class here, navbar. So I can individually customize my navbar, and in here, this div has a class of navbar logo. This div has a class of navbar menu. This div has a class of navbar menu links, and so on and so forth. So you're going to get a lot of divs with a lot of classes. Every single tag you will get in the habit of having a class. At first, it's really cumbersome and really annoying, and it's hard to wrap your head around, but it's okay. In time, you're going to get used to saying every HTML tag have a class associated to it. So this is going to start to look pretty normal when you start to code and get familiar. Now we're going to save this, and I'm going to go back to our page, and I'm going to refresh here, and oh no, it hasn't worked. The colors haven't shown up. I'm going to go back to style. That's because in here we haven't done showcase dot section 2 and dot contact form and open bracket. And then we have a whole lot of options in here, so I'm not going to cover them all. But as you can see, there are a ton of options in here for CSS styling. It is insane. There are so many to our benefit, and there are so many to our detriment. So we've really got to know what we're looking for in here. Otherwise, it can get really, really cumbersome. This comes with experience. So now I'm going to type in green, and I'm going to save. And hopefully I don't have any typos. Hopefully I didn't screw it up. But there we go. We've got our header. We've got our showcase. We've got our section 1, section 2, section 3, contact form, and footer. And now we've got our site. Very, very similar to this one, except everything here is in the center, and our site, nothing is in the center yet. So let's fix that. I'm going to show you one more thing before we take a break for questions and pause, because we're getting close to the end. It's supposed to be an hour and a half today, but I'm going to show this star, and we're going to see the star quite a bit. A star is what's called a wild card. So for every single style out there, I just want to do a text align, and I want to do a center. And when I type that in and I go back here, now all my text shifts to the center. Whoa, that was kind of cool. It all worked. So we're getting really, really close to what our original site plan looked like. Here's our header, showcase, section 1, 2, 3, contact form, and footer. Obviously, these look a little smaller, like our showcase or section 1, 2, 3, and contact form look a little bit small, but that's okay. We can fix that next time. What I want to do is pause here. And I know today, towards the end with Visual Studio Code, was a lot to take in. It was probably very new for all of you. And so I wanted to pause and just ask, are there any questions before we move forward for next week? I will send this video out in the chat so you have access to be able to refresh and review what we've done today. But we're going to be building off of this for next week. So I'm going to open up the unmute everybody, and we can have a conversation around what worked and what didn't work. So feel free to unmute and chat and ask questions live, and then we can talk about what worked and what didn't work, because I want to improve for the next time. So help me help you.
Yeah, hello. First of all, I just want to appreciate your guiding. It was easy to follow, especially for the Figma. But for me, newcomers with coding, so I don't know with that yet. So I just want to ask if you have any recommend key terms to search on YouTube regarding the coding part, on what you did just so far, so that I can prepare for next week.
Yeah, for sure. If you look up on YouTube, there's a good coding instructor that has a lot of videos, and I'll send this one out as well. But there's a guy called Traversy Media is really, really good. And so Traversy Media right here, he has a lot of content on beginner HTML, what to do, how to do it. So here's an HTML crash course for absolute beginners. Here's a CSS crash course for absolute beginners. Here's a JavaScript crash course for absolute beginners. So he's got really, really good content. He does go really slow. So feel free to watch this before next week. Feel free to watch these before next week. And then we'll start getting into actual coding in about week 5. So you should have about 5 weeks where we can review HTML and CSS. And again, next week, we're going to go over Figma a little bit more in advance, and then we'll go over HTML a little bit more in advance next week. And then the third week, we'll start really getting into HTML and CSS. And then again, we'll be in there for the fourth week as well, before we move into JavaScript and React. Let me post this link in the chat as well.
So the crash code, HTML crash code, they use the Visual Studio Code, yeah?
I think he does. Yeah, I can't remember what text editor he uses. He might use Sublime, but I'm pretty sure he uses Visual Studio Code. Generally speaking, it doesn't really matter, but I think in the beginning, try to emulate whatever he does in Visual Studio Code, because Visual Studio Code will help you when you actually want to get a job. It's most commonly used in companies as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions or any other requests, any other comments or feedback? Feel free to let me know. But hopefully today was a soft intro into coding and into programming and into web page design at a very basic level. Next week, again, we'll get into deeper level design, into how to take a pixel image and transform it into a web page. So we're going to create something along more of the lines of not so much what we did today, but more along the lines of this concept. Where did it go? More along the lines of this concept, taking a few images and picking out the colors and mixing and matching the colors to figure out, oh, which color combinations work best for which images. And then we will start to use this as the framework for our theme for the website. So I'll walk you through how to pick the dominant colors and then how to design the showcase and then how to move forward from there. But if there are no other questions, I appreciate all of you coming today, and thank you very much. And hopefully I'll see you all next week. Cool. Have a good night, everybody. And I'll put this up on YouTube, and you will see it in the chat window for review.
Oh, you have your YouTube channel.
Yeah, so maybe I should also highlight that one. It is in Thai predominantly, but I have a YouTube channel called Spot Skills. And in Spot Skills, I have all of these videos for learning HTML, data sciences, React, everything is in here, Python as well. So if you want the playlists, there's probably 200, almost 300 videos. But there's Python, there's full stack developer for JavaScript, which this one will lean heavily on. There's a full stack developer for Python as well. So there's 3 tracks that I've created. And I'm focusing primarily on the full stack developer track. If you want to go to this one, you're more than welcome to, but it is in Thai. So if you don't speak Thai, it's going to be pretty difficult for you to follow. But if you want to jump in, by all means, go for it. And I think also, oops, that's not it. This is the primary website for all of the coding. I'll pop this in here as well. This is the primary website for all the curriculum. And if you want notes on what we did, I would go to the prerequisites to get the Python versions if you're using Python, and then Node versions and NPM, how to get started with those. And then the front end will cover more of the HTML, what it is, how to use it, and then you have an HTML cheat sheet here. And then you can always look at the developer tools to see, oh, exactly how to use which ones. And there's notes and everything in here. This is what we're going to go over in week 3. So this will be something in week 3 that we'll cover. And then prior to that, or after that, there's CSS, cascading style sheets, and the developer tools, which I've shown a little bit of but this is really powerful as well. And then in here, if you want some resources, again, there's Traverse Media, W3 Schools for a little bit more static, color palette generators, and there's an animation that you can create your own CSS in. So put a couple helpful links there as well. So as far as the courses go, if you want to get started and learn for free right now, these take you right to these playlists. But otherwise, I'll be hosting this every week, and this course will always remain for free. So, all right, everybody. Hopefully I will see you all next week. Oh, whoops, I think I screwed up and I needed to go to everybody and paste this in here. There we go. So that is this site here. And again, all of this was created just with a React framework and then hosted on GitHub Live. So you can make some pretty advanced websites, some pretty cool stuff. You've got tables, you've got sections, and then you can go to different course layouts and different course curriculums. And then, boom. Perfect. All right, everybody. And see you next week. Thank you very much for coming. Adios, everybody. Bye.